So then I go into this traditional teaching model of going through and presenting to them. I have to do some of that. Can't completely go away from lecturing at all, so I have to lecture sometimes. And so we step through what a network is. Notice I don't say what's the internet, it's the network. And again, that's probably because they're going to be taking a networking class. And then I can skip this in that class when I get to it. So we talk about LANs and WANs mean local. WANs mean wide area. And the internet's a WAN. It's very wide. There's not much wider than the internet. And so, well, what kind of devices do we need to do that? So, talk about that. And certainly we need devices to connect. And all the ones on the left really are that: the phone, the laptop, the server, desktop. And then inside the network, on the right, we have routers and firewalls and LAN switches, and then this thing called the cloud. And that always brings up a discussion, well, what's the cloud? Well, here's another abstraction. The cloud is really because when people talk about the internet, they don't want to talk about all the details of the internet. They don't want to draw all the routers and all the connections and all the switches and all the firewalls, so they just draw a cloud and say the internet. That's an abstraction. So cloud computing came out of that concept because we were calling, in the networking world, networks that we didn't really want to define cloud. So that, with the next step, we'll call that cloud computing when we use resources that are out on the internet to save things, to process programs, those kind of things. So that comes with this slide. That's the first time you'll see that cloud. So here's an example of a LAN. Well, why is it a LAN? Because it's local. It's all tied together, and then there's a modem that connects you to your internet service provider. So if you're behind that modem, then it's local. Now today, we've broadened the term of local. Huntsville City Schools, 30,000 students are really on one LAN throughout the whole city. So they've redefined LAN a little bit to include if there's one group of people in charge of administration, it's a LAN. So it's not such a physical thing anymore. I don't know why my lines come up before my. So here's a wide area network, so we can see we got China, we got the US, we got Germany, all connected through that cloud, and I'm not going to go through that cloud. I'm not going to discuss what's in there because that's irrelevant to the WAN. Is that we're connecting these different places. This is one that most people don't talk about, the PAN. Anybody guess what the P stands for? Personal, right? It's the personal area network. And kids, they understand this because they have computers that are connected with Wi-Fi to their phones or through Bluetooth to their phone and their camera. They probably don't have cameras today. It's all on their phone. But the printer is that way too, so that's their personal area network. It doesn't have to be Wi-Fi. It could be plug in my cable. So we talk about the internet then, and here's a typical way somebody would connect to the internet, especially at home. So in my house, I have a wireless router, And we have some tablets and we have some phones, IP phones through Comcast. And we have computers and we have phones that all can connect through our wireless router into a modem that connects you to the internet service provider, which actually sends you up to another level of internet service provider. And then finally to the internet. So again, when you're talking about client-server networks, and the internet is a client-server network. There's servers out there that do things for you. You don't really care how they do it. You're just happy that they can do it for you. Here's the kind of things that the different kinds of servers that are out there. We have file servers. We use them all the time with our Dropbox or Google Drive. Web servers, every time we go to a web page. Print servers, not so much, but they don't realize that they're using print servers when they do. In our school now, we don't physically go and put our paper on the copier machine. It's networked. We just send it. Well, that printer is really a print server for all the teachers in the building. Then we have application servers that actually carry out processing so you don't have to on your device. And then of course they like the game servers. They all know about those. I can make one. I can make my computer a game server. And video on demand servers. And so, let me go back there. So there's other kinds of servers too. We talked about DNS. There's DNS servers. We come in here and we hook up to the guest Wi-Fi. Well, how do we get on the network? Well, there's DHCP servers that do that. So if it works, but you can, and that's a good discussion. You can limit how many people can connect to. And so I'm sure that's what they probably did. So again, here, a visual of client-server network. And here's our client. We don't care what's in the middle. We just care that we can get to our server on the other side. So the internet is a very large WAN. It's client-server based and impact. And so I try to gather as many different things that our kids might use that's on the internet and grab a picture of it and throw it up there. So they like going around looking at which ones. Oh, I use that one. Well, I don't use Netflix. I use Amazon, or they have something else they used to. Oh, we don't use email anymore. That's for old people. Okay, they're texting on their phones instead of emailing. And so they kind of look at that as, well, so how does the, again, internet impact their lives? And then finally, the protocols that the internet uses, and I make them learn them. And you may not make yours learn them, but I make mine learn them because they will use those through the next 4 years and probably a lot more than these. So World Wide Web is different than the internet, and the kids don't know that. So we do access the World Wide Web through browsers or other client applications we can get. We can transfer with HTTP and HTTPS, or we can use FTP and FTPS, or other things. We need routers and web servers and DNS servers. Oops, sorry. And so we talk about some old time things that where the internet started, and they're still out there. They're still out there. You could still use those old time connections. And
What do you call them?
Vintage.
Yeah, vintage.
Such as?
A lot like me.
Yes.
Vintage.
It's like the old telnets, the actual FTP interface.
FTP interface is
The,
one. Telnet is one.
That's still very much used in a data center or a network.
But not by our kids.
Oh, okay.
Not by our kids.
That's part
That
of
used to be
it.
the major way that we interacted. You know,
Okay.
the way that we interacted. And now-
So I always like giving them the, that I can type Telnet in my web browser, and I forget the URL, but there's a Star Wars Telnet site out there, and it tells the story of Telnet in symbols, slashes and colons, and they draw the robots, and they draw the people. And it's pretty cool, and the kids, wow, I didn't know that kind of stuff was out there. So I forget, but if you just Google Telnet Star Wars, it would tell you the story of Star Wars in text, but with using text to make pictures. So then we talk about uploads and downloads, and they all know what those are. But we talk about the two of them kinds, and because that's all, and this is where I would say, okay, open your computers, go to Google and bandwidth speed, and they come up with all different kinds of speed checkers, and they check how much speed they have, and they do all that. So I kind of include some activities while we're going through this. And they'll say, well, why is my upload so much slower than my download? Because you have asymmetric, most of us have asymmetric service from our internet service provider. Well, why is that? Because they don't want you to host a web server at home. They don't want you using up all the neighborhood's bandwidth on your web server. So they make it slower, so you can't do that, or it's too slow for you to do that and make money off of that. So a big difference between bandwidth and throughput. And by the end, they're making fun of the guy on the Comcast commercial who says, well, when we all get online at home, we start having bandwidth issues. Well, no, you don't. You're having throughput issues. The bandwidth is still there. You're just having throughput issues. So this is a good visualization of that, of symmetric and asymmetric. So who would have symmetric? Well, the people who have business, they pay more to the internet service provider to get the symmetric, so they have bigger uploads, uploads. So, and I don't go through all this with them now, but just so they know it's fault tolerance, meaning the hierarchy of the internet is such that if this guy goes down in the middle here, my packets can still get from point A to point B. And in fact, two of them could go down. And of course, the internet is really much bigger than that even. And so they get a chance to see that it's fault. That's what that means, fault tolerance. And then also a word that they need to understand is scalable or scalability. And the internet is scalable. We can keep adding on layers and layers and layers onto it. And so that's a good photo for that. And then finally, I think this is the last slide on this one, is just briefly touch on security. Here's all the things we like to do in our life. And again, that's where playing and learning and working, banking and all those things. And then there's people outside trying to get that all the time. So we have to have things in the middle here. So that, and then I said, well, that's another story. We'll go into the security later. Because I don't want to get into that too much at this point.